everyone. Welcome to the Empathy Evolution. Today, we have a special guest with us here, Bree McCastle, who most of her friends and confidants call her Bree. I recently found that she's also part of the Jeep Wrangler family, so that's exciting for me. She's a grad from University of West Florida with the College of Arts and Social Sciences and Humanities. She actually received her MBA from UWF also with the College of Business. And she's a certified business consultant and holds an economic development finance professional certification from the National Development Council. And as an economic development finance professional, she provides business assessments with emphasis on business credit analysis to support growth of small businesses. Super important. We'll talk a lot about that more later. And what we saw or found is that you specialize in ambassadorship, citizenship, stewardship, and critique with a focus in civic relations. And you're an advocate for diversity and inclusion, which is really a huge part of what we want to talk about today in equity in business. And you serve as a mentor for entrepreneurs. And I'm one of those. You can mentor me. I need lots of mentorship. And she just enjoys empowering community members and to start small businesses and collaborating with established organizations. So welcome to the show, Bree.
Thank you.
That was only part of your bio. There was way more that I could have talked about there.
Yeah, Bree is brilliant. So I met Bree because she's actually married to a friend of mine. Actually, mine and my sister's best friends from high school. And so we were lucky enough that Bree joined Liz. And so then through Liz, I got to meet her and immediately was super impressed because she is, quite honestly, you're a brilliant businesswoman. You're brilliant at helping people. And every single time I talk to you, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just a wealth of knowledge. So we are so happy to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I know it was nerve-wracking, but Bree was one of those people that when I put out the interest form, when she filled it out, I was like, this is the best ever. I was so thrilled that you wanted to be part of it. Because that to me is oh my gosh, when someone so brilliant and awesome wants to be part of something I want to do. I felt the same way about you. Both Brees, any Brees, apparently. I just have a thing for y'all. But, that makes you feel good, too. It's just such a vote of confidence in something that I believe in, you believe in. So we're super excited. And we asked you we really, as we go into Empathy Evolution, we really want it to be a guest-centered conversation. And so Bree had an opportunity to talk before this, and I also had a chance. And so we'll kind of let you tell us what you're passionate about in business and in life.
Okay. Well, I've been working in the corporate world for a while. I actually started my own company years ago, and it didn't go very well. And then I knew I needed to get more schooling, do more training, and I did. And after I completed that, I found out about a wonderful organization that I'm currently working with now. I've been in this role for about 4 years. And it's really just working with business owners and founders, entrepreneurs that are looking to start a company or, offer services. And they're usually, I think it's the energy when you're working with people that makes me happy, having been a part of their success. And then they always remember you and thank you for the help and believing in them. And then, any information that you shared with them, they're really thankful. And that's kind of what I really enjoy. Working with the corporate world, you don't necessarily get that. A lot of times you just have deadlines and you're just, working to better the shareholders of that company. Right. But when you work with a small business owner, it's much different because they have actually a passion.
Different's such a nice word for that.
It's so much different. It's just they have a passion for it. And, usually the solution that they've come up with is something that was impacting their life or someone that they knew, and they're solving a problem for someone. And just to see that excitement, and they're actually developing something that's making our entire community better. It's not just for themselves. It's other people are also benefiting from that. So that's one thing I just enjoy so much. It's just very satisfying to be helping real people that you can see, wow, they really have benefited from this, and it just makes me feel great. So I'm feeding off that energy, and it's even made me think about, why don't you revisit being a business owner and, that entrepreneur spirit.
Because it makes you crazy. No, I think it's so important though, because with entrepreneurship, being one and having a business, you go into something because it's your passion, and then, there's all the other breakdowns of things that you have to have, which is not something you can just, I mean, you can find lots of things on the internet, but it's hard. You really need that mentorship to really grasp and hold on to what do you need for finance? What do you need for scaling? What do you need for employees? And I mean, it's awesome that you do that. I'm sure it's really fun though too.
Oh yeah, it's never a boring day. You meet so many interesting characters, like from different industries. You could be working with anyone, like a company owner, like some of the company owners, like they've been in business 15, 20 years, and they're wanting to grow their business even more, or they're having issues knowing, what are where I'm not efficient. And I get to crunch numbers and tell them the metrics. Okay, this particular item is, you're not getting a good ROI on, or your overhead is too much, it's crushing you. And, in order for you to be successful, these are some things that you need to kind of look at and pay more attention to, and maybe have some cost saving measures in there. So that's the really neat thing. And that when they are wow, I wouldn't have been able to do that without you. It just feels good to be able to help someone, and it's not, it's almost like selfless, because that's the thing that makes me happy, is just giving back.
Right.
Really.
I think it's super inspiring how, you say, oh, I would love to go back into business at this point, but I go, how many businesses are you influencing in your current position? I mean, so many small businesses are potentially thriving or doing better than expected because of your passion for helping small business. So I think that's really cool. The first time I met you, when Liz told me, that was right when I was getting Food Raising Friends off the ground. And I think we were at a Blue Wahoo's game, and I swear I was probably so annoying, because I was like, tell me about this. What, you said there's this? And I felt like even in that short conversation, where I was just having to hold back because I wanted to ask you so many questions, that, I got some valuable insight into resources that were available to me to even get Food Raising Friends into a better standing. And now, I mean, it's grown leaps and bounds. And I think that was when I probably met you, was around 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And I know that you said you just finished up. So I think a big movement in our country, and I think it's a very positive movement, is creating more diversity in the workplace and starting to see companies utilizing diversity for their benefit instead of seeing it as, checking a box. And you said you just finished up an 8-week, was it a training course that you taught or attended? And you had some really valuable insight there.
Yeah, so thanks for asking me about that.
Of course.
It was actually, so it was a program by the University of South Florida.
Okay.
It was a 7-week program. It took me 8 weeks to complete everything because I got 1 week, I was a little behind. But the program was...
So what you're saying is you're human.
Yeah. Ooh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so it took me a little bit longer. But the training was actually fantastic. It was a DE&I in the workplace. So the first couple of weeks, they kind of focus in on just kind of educating individuals, some of those very simple things like, what is a bias? And, the one thing that was interesting about that, everyone has a bias. Being a woman of color, I was thinking, I don't have one, but I actually, they're kind of explaining you all have a bias based on your environment that you grew up in, and, based on the culture that you grew up in, you just identify more strongly with certain things. Right. And then basically, talking about how a bias, could turn into a stereotype. And then, when that becomes actionable, when you're actually acting out on those thoughts, then that's discrimination. So, covering some of those thoughts and just letting people know this is what you can do to counter those thoughts and not bring all of that, baggage or, those, ideas with you to the workplace. Something also that they really focused in on that I thought was really incredible is actionable things that you can do on this journey to be more inclusive in that space. Whether it's if you have a platform, be a champion and make sure, individuals are heard. If someone came up with an idea and then like 5 minutes later, someone else repeated the idea and they said, oh, that's a great idea just because someone else said it differently, bring it attention to like, no, I believe that was so-and-so's idea and you should let them kind of go into depth with that.
But also being accepting based on who the idea is coming from shouldn't be acceptable to us. Like if one person says the idea, I've even faced that recently, somebody bringing an idea to the table, they deserve the recognition, but also the validation that the person that brings it to the table later is receiving. And I really feel like as you're talking about these biases and stuff, that's exactly where empathy plays in, that we can only change ourselves and how we are willing to interact with others based on our biases and based on our prior experiences. And so we start to kind of shift our perspective and say, instead of judging the other person, whether it's based on how they look or based on the way they talk or based on on what we've experienced with people like them, we can say, I'm going to give you understanding before I give you judgment. I want to understand who you are and what your perspective is and what you bring to the table solely based on yourself, not based on any of my preconceived biases or prejudice that I have.
Right.
I think that's a huge shift because we have got to start reframing our brains and how we think about others. And I think that would be a way that organizations would be more willing to include more diversity, whether it be based on age, sexuality, gender. What do you think about that based on clearly the wealth of knowledge you have in that area?
I think there is lots of opportunity for us to improve, in the United States. And I'm glad that there's been a lot of focus on that. My thoughts on that is if we become, the first thing to do is to assess your organization, see how you're measuring up. Look at your metrics. Your metrics will actually tell you where you're at on that journey, how you can improve. I'm a big believer of data. That's kind of like what I do when I do my financial analysis. You're looking at, what it says on paper. You can't really, go against that, but what can you do to improve that? And really just taking a hard look at your organization, what you're doing currently, how you're recruiting, those roles and opportunities, how you're writing up those job responsibilities.
Yeah, we were talking about that. And I think it was really powerful to me when we were chatting prior to the show is that I feel like there's a clear definition between inclusion and diversity. And, even with our team, we're a team of 5, with the wonderful Travis included, who's set, all the cameras and mics up. But the 4 others are, in appearance wise, just white women, and I think it wasn't because we haven't interviewed someone who's diverse or comes from a different background. And we were talking about that. I was like, what are other things I can do to attract diversity? And I think, even in our job descriptions, they were pretty open as far as, we talked about work ethic's a big deal for us. We didn't really require people to have major degrees. And so it opened the door for some people to apply. But you talked a lot about putting people in the pipeline and really making sure you're promoting it in the right places to attract people of all walks of life. And I thought that was really interesting.
Do just something that I was not privy to that conversation, but just in what you're speaking of right now, is that a word that you used was attracting more diverse talent. Because oftentimes we say, we just expect that we keep doing business as usual, and then, hey, we'll just, like I said, you can almost get to the point of just wanting to check a box and saying, okay, we are checking our metrics and saying, we need more people of color in our organization or whatever. And instead, you're just doing business as usual and trying to fit, meeting those expectations. But what you really need to do is be promoting a more diverse workplace. We want to make a place where all people feel that they are attracted to doing what we do. And so I think there is a difference in how you frame a position when it's not just about checking a box based on who walks in the door, but about who trying to promote something that attracts people to walk in the door. Do you feel like that's...
Well, for the most part, I think you're definitely onto something. it starts with a conversation, but leadership really has to be on board with it. Leadership and HR, and then it needs to be a culture. Like you want to embrace that diversity culturally. And if you're not, then why not? Why are you hurting your own company? Because the metrics show that when you're more diverse, you're actually going to have better revenue, better ideas and opportunities coming out of that diverse population as far as intellectual properties and things of that nature. It's just going to be better because it's a truer reflection of your actual segment, your audience that you're serving, the world in general. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about that too, also with millennials, because I think there has been, speaking, in the framing of age, that millennials haven't always, I think there's how do I even word this? That somehow there's a concept that millennials aren't as hard workers as the generation prior to them. Do you feel like you've heard that?
That's totally, and
I don't think it's true.
Right.
And she was saying how businesses are losing opportunities by not including them or not giving them a fair opportunity based on their age.
I'll tell you that the last couple of hires that I've had, they're usually in their early 20s and they work so hard. But I think there's we also are attracting it depends on the environment that you provide, right? For entrepreneurs, and especially with the pandemic that's happened, people want flexibility. People want, the freedom to be creative. The people want freedom to be able to have a voice in a company. So I feel like a lot of corporate companies are having to change their whole dynamic of how they're actually hiring, because the values of what a corporate company used to be, okay, I want benefits, I want a 9 to 5, I want to be able to see my family. It's different now. It's completely different. And I think that we were talking about this earlier, that one of the questions that I ask all of my hires during our interview, in plain and simple, they'll finish the interview, we ask all the important questions, and then we ask in detail, you have to tell someone that you've never met and who's never made one before, you have to explain to them how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich step by step. And it really gives them the opportunity to be able to explain something. You get to see if they have any sort of character of assuming that they should know something, so it kind of brings out some really, it always catches them off guard.
Do you ever switch it up and be like, tell me how to make a grilled cheese?
I totally could. Same concept, right? How do you make a margarita? I really need to know, so.
That's actually a really good question. I think that when you ask an open-ended question like that, you get so many responses, but then it also tells you a lot about that person, how detail-oriented they are. It's just really fun. I was just thinking, how would I explain to make a PB&J? But yeah, it's a great question actually to introduce some other ideas and really dig into their perspective of who they are. How does that play in your diversity though for your hiring?
So, I think that I could do a better job, right, as a leader of a company, that we could really involve more verbiage and language to attract more. And I think with our promotions, we probably aren't as, what's the word I'm looking for? We probably aren't as intentional about, okay, what is, for me in my brain, being an entrepreneur, I typically think, who is going to be someone who is incredibly passionate about the position we're hiring for, because it's really hard as an entrepreneur. You always want someone to love your company as much as you do, but it's just not possible. And so you look for people who are open to learning new experiences. They're not putting themselves in a box, which is honestly really hard for some people because they've been in a box for so long. There's some hires that I have that they're like, hey, I'm running a couple minutes later. Like, hey, I'm going to go to the store. I'm like, I don't really need to know if you need to go to Target to go grab something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be on your back to see what you're doing every minute of the day. When I hire someone, we set clear expectations. And, as long as you're doing your job, that's all that really matters. I mean, obviously, we have metrics and stuff too. But to get to your question,
but your metrics probably include that freedom that you're also providing in a sense.
Right. And I think, for us, and I think that's a big part of why I was so excited to meet with you. You worked with a business development center for economic development. And I think that I am excited to learn new ways to do that. We're not technically hiring right at this moment, but when we do, that's going to be a huge factor for me. Because all of our company is really open to the idea of let's bring in as much as we can. And to us, creativity is a big part of that. And being able to work well with others. And to me, I don't care if they're, a gay man with blue hair or, a black woman who does protests every weekend. To me, I encourage that. And honestly, our team is, we always have at our end of week or beginning of week meetings, if there's something going on in the world, we challenge each other to think differently. Yeah. I come from a background of ancestry of Asian and Japanese, and then my husband's in law enforcement. And so there's all these conversations that we have all the time. And so we encourage and open the door for our employees to discuss that. But when it comes to hiring, I'm definitely excited to add more of that to attract diversity and inclusion. So, yeah.
Hey, it's Bree here. Thanks for listening to Empathy Evolution. We'll get right back to the show, but I want to take a couple of minutes to give a shout out to some incredible friends and sponsors. First up is Empathic Practice. When I talked with owner Felipe Munoz, he was so excited to support our mission at Empathy Evolution. If you haven't heard of them, I'll tell you that they've quite literally changed my life. They're a holistic wellness clinic that's in Pensacola, Florida, and they provide services like massage therapy, mindfulness and meditation coaching, and they have a physician named Dr. Haas who can determine if you qualify for a medical marijuana card. I'm a huge supporter of Felipe and his business, and I'm grateful that he is a sponsor for our show. Check him out by visiting their beautiful website full of resources at empathicpractice.us. Up next is Scarlet Magazine. This is the publication you guys have been waiting for, the latest in women's fashion, beauty, home decor, lifestyle, and health. They say we at Scarlet aren't afraid of something new, we aren't afraid to be different, and we don't care who you are, who you love, or what you look like. We want to empower women of all shapes and sizes and walks of life. And if that doesn't describe Becca and I in a nutshell, I don't know what does. So check out the latest issue of Scarlet Magazine in the Pensacola-Destin area, or you can view the digital subscription at issue.com. You can also visit their website at scarletmag.com or visit their Facebook page to see what they're up to. Because frankly, we know you give a damn. Becca and I want to thank you for listening and remind you that we put our blood, sweat, and tears into this production. My team at Social Icon does all the producing and promotion, and Becca's nonprofit, Food Raising Friends, does all the giving, and we continue to support her in doing that. We appreciate all who listen and hope you'll show us some love by leaving a review, sharing, or sending us a note of what you liked best about the conversation. Now, back to the show.
That's really brilliant, because once you start to get diversity into an organization and you're adjusting your culture, you need to make sure that people feel welcome. Mm-hmm. Whether they practice a different religion than you, mm-hmm. or, they culturally grew up different than you. Mm-hmm. It's important that they feel comfortable, that they can be who they are, they can be themselves, because when that person is, they feel embraced, they feel that they can grow. Mm-hmm. You just think about all the free-flowing ideas and support that they'll bring to the organization, because they feel comfortable, they feel right. happy, and they feel like, they've achieved that part of, their career. And there's so many other things that they'll go on and probably produce for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that for us, it's important. And I've always explained to our team that if there's something that's bigger and better for you that really serves you as a person and what you want to do that. Never feel like, we've had some folks
don't let social icon become the box.
Yeah. And that's, there's tons of things, and agency work is so different. And we've had some people who've come on and they're like, I was not prepared, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you failed at something, or it means that you weren't cut out for the work. It just means that you operate differently, mm-hmm. So I think if there's one thing, even if we don't have a portfolio of diversity yet, I think for us, the one thing we have lots of inclusion. For us, it's, the door is always wide open. Anyone is comfortable to say whatever they feel. Anyone on my team, you could ask them, like, hey, do you feel like there's anything you can't talk about? And there's definitely not anything not on that table, so.
Is there, and this is a moment for me to be more educated, and this is maybe throwing you off, but we also were talking about equity in the workplace. So what does that look like in reframing diverse workplaces? How does equity play into that?
The best way that I've heard that explain is they have 3 little boys going to see a baseball game, right? One of the young men, he's tall. The other is probably average height, and then the other little boy is quite short. So the equity part is making sure that everyone has access to view the game and working with them with whatever abilities or disabilities that they may have. So for the shorter person, providing them with a larger platform so they could see over the fence. So if you're looking at that particular idea, it's like providing that person with more support and with the resources that they need to be successful, whatever, wherever they're at. And I guess to speak more plainly, one of the speakers that we had in our program, she had dwarfism. So she wasn't as tall as your average woman's height. And what her organization did, they put a small step stool in each operating room. So whenever she went in there, she didn't have to rely on anyone else to make sure that, she could be on, above the area to work or operate on that person. She had that support from the company that it was in every room. So she had that ability to just do her normal thing that she was trained and educated for. And then that resource that she had available, it was the company provided it because she let them know what she needed, but then it was there, and that was just equitable for her. She was allowed to do her job that way.
I think that an important thing that I've kind of been hearing, because for me, I'm in nonprofit, and so the opposite is true. We don't really have employees. We have a board of directors, and we've, tried to create a diverse board of directors, but we also serve an extremely diverse population. So when I think of the different people we serve, there's no boundaries or limitations on that, and everybody gets the same service, and that's really important to us. But when I hear, one thing that I'm super passionate about is when you talk about the 3 people, and is she a surgeon?
She was
some sort of physician. And they have created a place where she can walk in and do her best without having to jump through so many hoops. And it's to accept that not every person in your organization or every person you serve is coming from the same norm. It's kind of like, stop expecting you out of everyone, because we only can see the world through our norm, through our experience. And so when we see someone that's experiencing the world differently and we choose to ignore that, we're doing ourselves a disservice, but we're truly hurting them and their potential. And when we start looking at people and saying, your norm isn't going to be the same as mine, whether it's your height, whether it's your background, whether it's your education, but creating equity in the workplace, to me, I guess, is saying, just because our norms aren't the same, how do we create a level playing field for everybody when we bring you into our organization? So that's mind-blowing to me a little bit. So I really thank you for that analogy.
Yeah, it's being thoughtful and really asking someone, what do you need to be successful?
Yeah.
Because it is realizing the world is much more complex than having a copy of you everywhere you go.
We can't. Yeah, and I even go to the when we speaking in terms of empathy, again, giving that understanding. What do you need that's different than what I need? And it's not bad, or you're not less than just because you need something different than what I need.
Right.
I mean, that's a big thing, is that sometimes we begin to view people as less than or better than based on their needs being more or less. And the truth about it is it's just different.
Right.
It's not, there's no hierarchy of people having equity in the workplace. We should all have access to being able to be our best selves without being ranked higher or lower based on needing an additional assistance. And I think a lot of times when it comes to a person with a disability, we, speaking that she was shorter, we think of the stool and we think that's not a big deal. But what about if the person just hasn't had as much experience or had as much opportunity based on their economic circumstances or whatever? Are we creating space to provide them more opportunities without looking down on them for not having them in the first place?
Yeah.
And I think that's where empathy plays a big thing. And, I think when I thought of equity prior to this conversation, I was thinking of equity as I treat everyone equally. But the truth about it is it's really a step past that. It's an actionable item that's not just, oh, okay, well, I think of everyone the same, which is probably quite honestly impossible because we have internal bias we don't even realize. But more about what are the actionable things I can do to ensure I'm treating everyone equally, not just thinking of them equally.
And even treating everyone with the same level of support.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the level of support's the same for everyone.
And it's okay to provide that additional support. Man, I feel like we are growing right now.
That's the whole point,
Evolving right before our own eyes.
You know, and as we kind of come to a close, I think to me, it almost sends chills over my body because I think it's so important to gain perspective from, I think there's a misconception about inclusion, diversity, equity in the workplace. And honestly, I think it's just a lack of knowledge, there are resources available. And so Bree, I'd love as we come to a close for you to give us any thoughts that you have on, how people can really practice empathy with the thought of diversity, inclusion, being equitable in the workplace, or any other tidbits you think would be really helpful for them to know. Okay.
Well, two things. So, there's a book that I'm reading right now by Terry Short, and it's called The Words We Choose. And it's a really great book. I've started reading it and I haven't completed it yet, but I'm working on it. But it talks about the 3 types of empathy that there are. And I was just like, because when I thought of empathy, I just thought of this like word that kind of like shows that you are basically, reaching out to the other person, trying to meet them where they are, and like really listening to them. That's what I had thought empathy was, listening to them. But there's actually 3 ways to practice empathy. So I really suggest that book. It's been a really great read, not only about the way you talk to yourself, but how you talk to others. And then the other thing, I guess I would just like to really thank you guys for having me on. This has just been wonderful. Thank you.
We've enjoyed having you.
Yeah, I mean, and truth be told, this is like our, technically in filming wise, we don't know how we'll release them, but this is like our first episode. So it's it's a really good one.
It was. And I really appreciate you bringing up that book because there's so much good information out there. I think empathy is something that's almost we're calling it empathy evolution, but in society, I think it's evolving. And I think people need to stop seeing empathy as, again, just a way of thinking and actually a way of an actionable skill that they can learn.
Because it is.
Empathy is a skill and you can teach yourself. And so, that's our goal here. And we appreciate you being here with us today.
And we'll put the book in the show notes. Terry Short, The Words You Choose. And stay tuned for more episodes about empathy. And the solution is the empathy evolution.